Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we are focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guest is David Dezso. David is the founder and CEO of Banyan Risk Group. Prior to starting Banyan, he served 10 years as an Army Green Beret, and he's here today to talk about his career in the military, as well as what he's done afterwards to help veterans. So welcome to the show, David. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be able to share my story up with the guys that are trying to transition now and trying to figure out the next phase and next adventure they're on. I served from 2004 to 2014, transitioned out of there and jumped into business, and then jumped into the entrepreneur lane, which a lot of veterans jump into these days. So, it's based out of Houston, married with 2 kids. So everything so far, so good.
Yeah. And I find it interesting. I want to talk back a little bit about, how you ended up getting into the military. I find it interesting to hear about how people get into the military, what their motivations were, and ultimately, what their career path was along the way. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in law school, correct? When you eventually decided to enlist in the military. Is that correct? Yeah. So what was the motivation behind that decision to join the military, and how did you come about that decision and everything that went along with that?
Yeah. So I grew up in Texas and went to the Citadel, which was a military college in South Carolina. Wasn't your typical military guy there. Was pretty laid back and chill. Looked at ruck marching as like an abuse of not being out in Charleston on Saturdays. But for the most part, wasn't that really inclined. I thought about being a JAG, but really wasn't trying to turn anything over on that side. Was Air Force ROTC. So again, as laid back as you can get within the Citadel's framework. Went on to law school and was going to be a prosecutor. And 9/11 happened, and in my second year, and actually my second year, with the fall of my second year. And from then, I kind of just felt like I was in the wrong place. At that point, I had a little bit of a hiccup with some knee issues. I had 2 knee surgeries prior, and then needed to have a third to be able to get in the military because I had screws on the top of my knee, which are on the top of right below my knee that would be kind of hard to deal with if you were kind of trying to join the Army. So once 2001 hit, I was kind of like headstrong, started doing my research. So I joined the Marines, Air Force, Army, Navy, and looked at all of them and really liked the structure of the Army, where you could go infantry, airborne, Ranger, SF, and JSOC. And the idea would be you stop at whatever level you're most capable at and where you're kind of limited to. So if you're at an airborne infantry unit, that's great. If you're an airborne unit, even better. If you're Ranger Battalion, exceptional stuff. And then if, at the time I didn't have grand visions of a special operations career, I just kind of set forth with, I want to be in the infantry and I want to be deployed. And that was kind of how it started. So at the end of at that time, about 2002, we're getting into, my friends that were in the military from the Citadel used to think that this war was going to be about 100-hour war, similar to Desert Storm. Right. And that sounds shocking as we just wrapped up 20 years of war. But at the time, that was what we thought it was going to be. We'd go in, kick their butt, and then come back out. So the idea was, don't waste law school, stay in law school. And then if the war's still going on when you get out and get the degree, then look at it. And I thought that was good advice. So I got out, I graduated in 2003 and had a knee surgery, and then was all gears ahead towards the military. Couldn't really afford to be an officer. They wouldn't pay your school loans back. And so if you enlisted, they would. So I had about $70,000 worth of school loans from law school. So I took that enlisted route. They wiped off the loans, which was great. Didn't make any money as an enlisted guy, but at the same time, didn't need anything, right? So the Army kind of provides for you. E4, you can live just fine. So I came
Right.
in the Army as an E4, had a really fantastic drill sergeant in the middle of basic training. His name was Drill Sergeant Rodriguez. I never got his first name, but he was exceptional. And he basically saw some future in me and basically changed my contract from 11 Bravo to 18 X-ray. And at that point, I got switched over to a different track. So originally, I was going to go to Fort Lewis, and then I did not with that change of the drill sergeant. And really, that was pretty impactful because uh, they were late on their orders. So it was rare that someone in the machine of the Army actually cares enough about you to like push it through. So essentially, I used to call this kind of divine intervention. But my orders did not come on the completion of AIT, Advanced Infantry Training. And so I was supposed to get shipped out to Fort Lewis, and the drill sergeant and the captain decided to hold me over as a holdover for 2 weeks and give the SF branch enough time to switch the contract, which they did. Had they not done that, I would have just lost the opportunity and gone up to Fort Lewis, where I was going to be in the Stryker brigades. So that was really, it was a really, as far as like a timing and a divine intervention, a kind of critical moment for me. At that point, went in the Army and went to Bragg and was kind of gung ho. Intentions, all I really had intentions wise was go into the infantry, get a part of the combat, do what I was, capable of doing. I was I was pretty athletic growing up, nothing crazy, but I was definitely, they at one point they were like, well, we can put you in with a law degree. We can put you in all these admin roles. I'm like, get out of here. I'm either combat arms or I'm not in. And that was the way I kind of did it. Then once I got in, I kind of hid all the education. I was 27. I hid the knee surgeries, hid all that. And so went in and just did the best I could to get in the best group I could. I knew that I didn't have any training options as an enlisted guy. Sometimes you can get airborne training guaranteed or Ranger battalion slots or 18 X-ray slots right out the bat. Because I had a broken arm previous, they would not give me any training options. So they said I could earn it. So a lot of risk and a lot of faith there, but I didn't care about the title. I just wanted to be in the infantry and get a part of the war before it ended. Kind of felt like I didn't want to be 27 and have regrets. It's a little too young to have regrets that early. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's that's a good way to go. I think that actually very closely mirrors kind of my career path in getting into the military as well, in the sense that I was in college, decided to wait till I graduated college before joining the military. I was in college when 9/11 happened and everything, and it's one of those things where, yeah, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. I want to be in combat. That's why I'm signing up for this. I'm not signing up so I can, process someone's paycheck or something, some admin role like that, So I want to, be deployed and get involved with, the military. So like, I totally understand where you're coming from there. I
It's a
also had the
different,
option.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a different time now because they really weren't that motivated for 9/11. They just wanted to serve in the military. And I've got a young little boy that would loves the Army and loves all this stuff. But I'm like, man, that'll be interesting because prior to 9/11, I wasn't that guy. Like I wasn't
Right.
on anybody's radar to be Super Soldier 1000. Like I just was a laid back guy that was kind of all over the place. But it was interesting as the shift in the last probably 10 years of the war, you had people that really weren't that impacted by it, but were still drawn towards the service of the country.
Right. Yeah. And I was brought up in a very patriotic family. And so like when 9/11 happened, I almost dropped out of college that day and went to the, Army recruiter that very day. But, I decided, let's sleep on this decision. Let's not just make any kind of rash, judgments. And even though I waited a little bit, a few years, I still ended up going to Afghanistan. So it's not like I missed out on my opportunity, with a, short war, like a Desert Storm kind of thing like that. So
Yeah.
So
I,
you got out of the military in 2014, right? That's
yep.
what you were saying. Yeah. So, and what was that transition out of the military like for you? Were you prepared for what was waiting for you after you took off that uniform, or was it kind of a bit of a shock?
I wouldn't say it was a shock, but it was definitely intense. So at that point in my life, I had been gone about 10 months a year for a decade straight, whether in training or deployed. And my wife and I wanted to have children. And so she was 35 weeks pregnant. We drove back to Texas, bought a house with no job, and was just working the process. And from what I understood, what I looked at it was my last couple senior roles within special operations. I wouldn't get a lot of guidance. I'd get, you're going to this country and brief the commander in 6 weeks. And so you had to build it up and kind of look at, shaping what you needed to accomplish. Well, that was the kind of way I looked at it at Houston. I looked at it as infilling into Houston. How do I figure this out? How do I build a network that can support me? Because one of the things is, if you're going to be a hot, a commodity item, a hot commodity item where you're trying to grow, they need to know who you are. So when I first got to Houston, I had 4 trips prior, and I probably had about a network of 50 new people in Houston that had heard of me, met me for coffee, lunch, dinner, drinks, whatever. And we're aware that I was trying to come to Houston on this date and looking for oil and gas jobs. And I didn't care what the role was. I just wanted to get the best role I could in the best company with the right opportunity. I had just like anything, like you can be beating the pavement for a year and then 1 week, 3 opportunities come. So
Right.
I think this is probably September, October of 2014. I had GE. I had an offer from GE. I had an offer from Forum Energy Technologies, and I was looking at an offer at another oil and gas company at the same time. So it all came kind of quick. But what the common theme was is all the groundwork I laid in building that network prior was working for me. And I didn't really understand that at the time. I just knew that I needed to have as many tentacles out as possible. I mean, it's shaking hands, kissing babies, having coffee, whatever it was. And I just kind of was relentless at that. A lot of people don't attack the transition. They kind of wait for, the Army's kind of great at, well, we do everything for you. We pay you for housing. We pay you for food. You don't have to think. You just have to be a soldier. Well, that's great in the Army. Outside of the Army, nobody does that for you. So you do have to think about all the things. But with that comes the gift of you can shape whatever you want, right? Army has a fixed mindset of everything has got to be this way. Well, in the civilian world, you can make it whatever you want to be, but you have to push and drive. It's not going to come to you just because your military transition program gave you 77 different briefs that kind of help you prepare. That's a great thing. However, you always got to stay engaged and understand you're driving your own success.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely right, and I think that's a great thing that you were doing in terms of like working that network and getting out and just being proactive really and taking charge of your own destiny, if you will, getting out there and meeting with people and talking with people and trying to figure out where the best place is for you.
Yeah.
And so during this time period you got involved with helping out veterans in a networking group, like a kind of happy hour type thing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So at the end of 2014 and 2015, oil was above $100 a barrel. And so what this meant was that there was a flood of jobs in Houston, as many as you could get, and veterans were definitely prized positions. So a company like Halliburton even has on the transition, when you say, I'm looking for this career and I'm from this in the military, if you say, I'm an 18 Charlie or an 18 Zulu or whatever your job is, they will then correlate that to what you can apply to in Halliburton. So at the time, they've got truck drivers, they've got medics, they've got water, they've got all engineers, they've got everything that the military has. So oil and gas was a huge driver for veterans that were transitioning, and they were pulling a lot, whether that was the F-16 Top Gun pilots or it was Green Berets or it was mechanics or whatever it was. Houston seemed to have opportunities for all, and it still does. As the oil price changed, that got a little diminished over time because of the amount of job loss in the industry space. But at that time, I had a couple key people in Houston really help me out. And one of the things that they had started was this thing called Houston Veterans in Business. Originally started as Houston Veterans in Energy, and then we switched it over to business. But there were a couple really critical veterans that never not took my call, always helped me answer anything, would make introductions, and kind of the commitment was to each other. So we started this happy hour that was every Wednesday, same place, same location, and kind of created this email alert out to the group. So it was maybe started with 20 people in 2014 and 40 people in 2015, and then maybe 200 in 2015 at the end of 2015, and then 400 plus. I mean, I don't know what it is today, but it's a lot. And what would happen is you get 2 or 3 phone calls a week from a person trying to connect a veteran to a job. And instead of being able to take an hour or two to mentor that person, you'd say, hey, look, just come to happy hour on Wednesday. I'll help you and I'll introduce you to a tribe of veterans that, number one, are in different categories within working in Houston, build a network there, and then I'll help you rewrite your resume or coach you up on what you're trying to do. And so it was really organic, and it was very, it was just genuine. There was nothing that we didn't formalize. We weren't a 501c3, weren't trying to raise money. All we were doing was the vets that showed up cared about each other and trying to help a person out, whether they were from the Army or Navy, Air Force, didn't really matter. And the only thing we would push back on the people that we mentored was that you need to help raise up the next veteran that comes through. So that was really great in 2014, 15, 16, and was pretty meaningful. And it can happen real organically as long as you stay committed. Like, I think Dallas tried it. I'm not sure how well it worked in Dallas, but essentially all it takes is 5 to 10 people to get it off the ground to show that consistency. And then before you know it, you can do things like leadership development programs. We have companies like consulting companies like Bain or Egon Zehnder host us. So we put out a list of like, hey, we've got 20 spots for an executive seminar from Egon Zehnder, which is an executive headhunting firm. Or we'd have Bain talk about what do they see as the trends in oil and gas. A lot of times they'd be hosted by a veteran within the organization, and that would be exceptional. We had GE, Cameron, some really great companies kind of come together and host us. And really, they're looking for talent anyway. So they love the opportunity to share what they're working with, and then at the same time, see what we're able to do.
Yeah. And getting together with a bunch of veterans and the companies that are looking to hire veterans, that just seems like a win-win, getting that organization, not even organization, but getting those people together, on a regular basis and consistently, and, getting to know one another and just like in the military, we try to help each other out, as best we can. And I've never really been able to find any other group of people, anywhere else that I've ever worked or anything that is more inclined to help out one another as I am the military and the veteran community, and so like it just like if you're struggling with something, finding a job in a certain area or whatever, like getting involved in some of these networking groups is I think a great way to go. And what you guys were doing is basically getting that network together and making it so that people can help each other out, in an easier way, right?
Yeah, it was, and it went beyond work, right? So like if we saw someone that was, there was a specific person of mine that I mentored, and, I saw some trauma inside of this person, and I saw a lot of like not being able to hold down a job. And when I asked him about how his mental health was and worked through that, it wasn't great. And he had come from an organization within the military that was very rigid. They did not seek help. They were supposed to be tougher than that. And it was looked at as a weakness if you needed some type of help for mental health. And he got out a little bit before the modern era of a lot of support systems. But essentially, we helped him and mentored him and kind of helped shepherd him through to get to the right psychologist to kind of help him unpack those things he's going through. And so it really went from, work, let's get a common bond together, let's help each other out as a brotherhood. But at the same time, it expanded more into that because, at the end of the day, it was a great relief valve because you'd come back from, if I would have went to GE, which I didn't, I went to a company called Farm Energy, which was a great opportunity for me. But I'd come out and I'd have frustrations, right? So go meet at a happy hour and kind of blow off steam with other guys that understood your career path and what you had done or what you were
Mhm.
frustrated with. And it was very common. And so not only was it a great relief valve for veterans that are transitioning, it was also just that community, right? A number of of the problems we have with veteran suicide today is that there's no they go home and they're away from everything, right? They're alone, they're isolated, and they don't have that community. I've always said, and I'll stand by this still, there's no better city in America for veterans than Houston, Texas. This city really does a lot for veterans, and whether that's through its own veteran organization, through community leaders that just refuse to have um, veterans not be supported. So there was a period of time, and I'm going to get some of these stats wrong, so don't hold to me, but in 2011 there were over 3,000 homeless veterans, and some of the business leadership in town just said this is not going to be our city. That's not going to be what we're known for, and we're going to fix it. And it took civilian leadership and corporate leadership and sponsorship to build a pathway, but they led that program. And then within a year and a half, there were no veterans that were, or not no veterans that are homeless. They had a veteran pipeline that got them onto their own solid footing. And so that's still today. I mean, I think it's dramatically reduced. I don't think there's many, if any, but they've got a process that they can go to still today that was stood up back, 10 years ago now. But that's a part of the commitment of the community. When we have when tragedy strikes the U.S., we do well by coming together. It's unfortunate it takes a damn tragedy to come together. But when Houston floods or has a hurricane or something dramatic happens, it's usually the corporate leadership that comes together, the CEOs from Exxon, Conoco, all these giants come together and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to fix this. And the mayor is kind of a guest. It's not driven by the government. And that is something that's unique that I've seen to Houston that not a lot of places have. And,
Right.
for us, there's a lot of variety in Houston. It's the most diverse city in America. And more importantly, it's diverse from skill sets. You could be a Green Beret that went to Wharton Business School that's going to be an investment banker, or you could be a welder and find a great job here and find a great quality of life. And there's a range from anything you want to be. And that's not the case in most cities. Most people, when they come to Texas from the veteran world, is they feel like, finally someone that appreciates what I did. That's
Mhm.
kind of a relief. I travel about 20 days a month all over the country for my current job. And there's certain states that are definitely veteran friendly and certain states that are not. So as you transition, I would definitely recommend looking at the state benefits, some of the things that they offer, the culture of the people. You can tell a lot by the way a city or state does care about veterans by what they're ready to commit to resources wise. This is an old statistic, but Houston does a thing where if you're over 60% disabled vet on your license plate, you get a specialized license plate. You don't pay toll roads. Well, not every city does that. Not every state does that. That costs Houston, Texas. This is old stat, but it used to cost them $6 million a year. Well, that's putting your money where your mouth is, right? That's
Right.
hurting the city budget to support unworthy costs. That is the type of commitment you're looking for, not just BS coming out of your mouth. Plenty of
Mhm.
people talk about it and use the veteran as a petting zoo, like, oh, we need to have our vets, blah, blah, but they don't really intend to help you empower you to be successful.
Yeah, and I think that whole community aspect is a huge thing because it does require more than just, like you said, the mayor or, people like that to be involved. And certainly their involvement isn't going to hurt anything unless they're, specifically trying to hurt the process. But getting more people involved in helping out veterans, and people will do that. They'll go out and they'll put their money where their mouth is and make this process work for veterans. But like you said, that might be unique to Houston, what you were experiencing in your area. So what if there are some people out there who are looking to kind of build together this network, maybe in an area that doesn't have a network group or a happy hour group like the one that you were involved with in we're talking about, but maybe they just want to get that going in their area. What kind of things would they look to do to start getting that network work going in their area?
Yeah, it really only takes probably 5 veterans that come together. If you can get 5 people that are willing to come together every week, once a week. And what we found successful was keeping it at the same location, same time, and then it was about spreading the word.
Mhm.
There's if you wear a wristband, one of these memory bracelets or a Sunto or G-Shock, doesn't matter whether you're in Denver, Charleston, South Carolina, DC, there's veterans everywhere. And we all kind of know what we look like. It's kind of surprise. It's not surprising when you walk through an airport and see it. So I just say, one of the things that we started from was just genuinely being interested in caring for others. And by having consistency, like if we wouldn't have been consistent in the first 3 months, it wouldn't have grown because it would have become this one-off thing. And then
Yeah.
some people say, well, once a week is too much. I'm married. I've got kids, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But you need at least 5 people or more that are willing to be there all the time. One thing, I had a brand new baby when I committed to this. And one thing I said to my wife at the time was, look, this is, at first 1 hour was fine, but now we've got so many people there. We're helping so many people get placed in jobs and get even more prepared. I asked him like, hey, look, I need to stay there for 3 or 4 hours just to make sure that they're getting all their questions answered. And at that time, I actually felt more fulfillment out of helping them get placed than I did my own career. And so that also helped me in the transition. Like most vets change jobs within 2 years of getting out. And that's because they're trying to find their place. They don't really, it doesn't matter how well you target your opportunity. You're really kind of going into new waters,
Mhm.
It'd be like, in the military, as a military angle, it'd be like you're going from, Ranger Battalion to a surface warfare officer, and you're going to be on an aircraft carrier. While you think you might know what that looks like, until you're on the ship for 6 months, you really don't know. Just like that person, when they try to switch to the Ranger Battalion, is not going to have any idea what just happened to them. So you can prepare, but just remember that when you can create that village and you do commit to your fellow veteran, helping them, it also makes your life a lot better and more meaningful as well. There is no community or culture that protects its own better than we do. We got a lot of us. So I think there's 2 million combat vets. There's a lot of people to help. But at the same time, when you've done a great job, I always kind of look at that's your next job, is to like help the next guy come up.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we do very well in the military community, the veteran community. We do help each other out quite a bit, and there's you might as well leverage that network of veterans who might be in your area. And so getting those people together on a regular basis, not even just for your own like selfish purposes, but also for helping out those other people who might just be struggling on their own, with their career, with their family, whatever. Getting them all together and working out a solution to something, helping them with their resume, like you were saying, or whatever the case may be, making an introduction to someone who might be able to hire them. It's just one more way of helping people. And you said something earlier that really rung, sounded like really good to me, and like mirroring what I'm doing now with this podcast, is that you found more fulfillment in helping out the other veterans who are out there, and than you did in your own career. And for me, like this podcast is just one of those ways that I'm out there helping out veterans and sharing inspirational stories and different things that are helping out veterans. And to me, that is the thing that is motivating for me, is knowing that there are people out there who might listen to some of these episodes and be better off for it. I may never even know who these people are, but I know that there are people out there listening, and it's just really motivating for me to get out there and help out those veterans. And I don't need a note saying thanks or anything for me to keep doing it. I do it knowing that there are people out there who are benefiting, and that's all I need, you know.
For sure. And, you know, it's one of those things. And when you see someone take your advice and it works for them, oh man, it's like, I remember placing these two kids, they called them kids, but they were probably, you know, mid to late 20s. But I remember when they got placed, I was like so ecstatic for them. I was like, man, you know, just that 3 hours with them and the phone call to this person and connecting a couple dots took that person from unemployed, kind of hopeless, not real happy, to now having somewhere to go, create some meaning, get some education behind them, get some time to breathe. Because a lot of this, you know, a lot of these, you know, there's a group in Houston that was started by Doug Fauché and Donovan Campbell. Donovan Campbell was a Marine officer, infantry officer, and Doug Fauché is an exceptional oil and gas leader and was a big fan, big guy in the CEO world here. But he, you know, they committed to starting a nonprofit called Next Stop that focused on E4 to E7 or 8. And they said those are the people that are going to struggle. They identified those as being the hardest to help transition to a positive job and get them rolling. Well, Doug's career, he was a senior executive at Halliburton and a number of places, and he led a company called El Paso Energy. But he really understood the marketplace, and he was a really great listener on what the veterans were saying and needing. And man, I mean, they made a huge impact. I don't know how many people they've placed so far, but it's significant. And that's all community driven, you know? And so it doesn't take much. It's commitment. You know, one of the things I saw with Doug is he called his peers out, you know, and he was very serious. The other thing I'd say about the group, you know, after, you know, when I was my first deployment, we would go to firefights, come back, get the trucks ready to go again, get water, ammunition, all that stuff ready to go. Then we went straight to a room and we had an after action review. And I was way more concerned about disappointing someone in that room than I was about combat. Well, that room was really a very rough feedback session for anybody. Didn't matter what you did. If you messed up, they called you to the carpet very quickly and said, fix it or you're going to move off the team, kind of thing. But oh my God, what a gift, right? In the civilian world, from what I saw was nobody gives you feedback because they're too scared of what you're going to say, or they don't want to hurt your feelings, or they want you to continue to fail so that they can look better than you. And it's a gift. Feedback is a gift. And even as it was uncomfortable, I mean, what a great way to fix your problems. Think about like if you weren't doing your job well, and then you went back to the next firefight and you failed again, someone got killed. Like there's no room for that. Well, not everything's that extreme, but at the same time, feedback is the gift that helps you get better and helps the team get better. So what I would say is, as these, you know, veteran organizations come together, don't BS our fellow vets as they go through. Don't give them lip service, commit to them, tell them what it's like, tell them the good parts, tell them what sucks. And at the same time, you know, speak truth to power. And for me, that's always critical. You know, it doesn't help anybody to sugarcoat, candy, sell everything. It just makes the transition a little harder, I think, for them, because it ends up being anticlimactic on their side.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I think that's just, you know, generally good advice. I don't think that that's necessarily advice that's specific towards the military. You know, give people, you know, the honest truth. And, you know, if their feelings are a little hurt over it, well, oh well, you know, like
yeah, but as they transition into corporate culture, they won't see that. They will not.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've worked in a couple of corporations, and every time I moved around, people are very scared of feedback. And, you know, just doing something like career planning with some people, like, hey, let's talk about where you want to go in the company, kind of questioning, was not always available, right? So if you're in oil and gas, they're kind of giants of industry, and they're not, they may not be concerned about every position as well, right? This is the other thing I'd like to go into is you've got big companies like GE and Exxon and Halliburton, then you got mid-sized companies, and then you got small companies that are founders. When you're a veteran transitioning, make sure you focus on what size company and what your skill sets are to the table. If you are a big time conventional person that likes having size, like if you're coming from Fort Hood and you're used to this big organism, jumping into Halliburton or GE will be just fine. It won't feel that different. if you're a special forces guy and you jump into GE, you will be looking for a new job within 3 to 6 months, largely because you will be bored. Or you'll sit there and go, did I make the right decision? I'm not getting fed enough. Like there's a hunger and there's basically, they're so mature that their processes are like this. You just go tick, 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 tick. Whereas an SF guy's trying to do this,
Okay.
and so, identify, know yourself, number one, and then understand as much as you can about these companies and what they're doing. And small to mediums, what I've seen with veterans that are hungry end up being better fits because they need you to do more things and they don't have time to wait for you to have training and all this other scenario that a big company will have. But man, I really need you to just lock down Midland, Texas. Can you go figure that out? Yeah. If it's me moving men and widgets, we can figure it out.
Mhm.
I was told when I was in my oil and gas company, I was a director of sales for a drilling business unit. And this guy, the head of the senior vice president goes, Dave might be our best salesman. He just doesn't know what he's selling. And the point is just get after and be hungry. You got to work hard. I think what I see the most in is vets are kind of coming out with so many programs offered to them. They kind of expect that. And then it's like this entitlement of, well, you didn't show me or you didn't tell me what to do. Get that out of here. Go back to being hungry and get to whether it was, whatever your school was that you learned and you had to pass to be a professional in your job. Remember how running on the edge you were and you were scared to fail and you wanted to be whatever, the best mortarman, the best pilot, the best mechanic, whatever it was. Remember that feeling and go back to that because that's what you got to feel to transition well.
Yeah, and it is an intense process, and sometimes when all these programs get thrown at you, it's overwhelming, and you may not even know what programs to go with because you sit in a class that they tell you about all these programs, and it's like drinking from a fire hose when you get so much information thrown at you. It's like I'm going to miss something somewhere along the way, and so. While yes, these programs are out there and they're available, my guess is that you're probably missing some of the opportunities that are out there because they got lost in the mix of everything else. So, like you said, take it upon yourself and figure these things out, and you can do it. Like it's not unheard of that people can figure these things out. You don't need to have your hand held through the transition process. You didn't need to have your hand held as you were, going through your military career. You were able to figure it out for the most part. And why should this transition be any different? There are ways that you can get involved with other people and network into the job that you're looking for.
Yeah, I always say your network will find the next opportunity for you long before you do.
Okay.
So if you are, if you're doing what you need to do and networking, and by networking, I mean building genuine relationships. I don't mean using people to get a job.
Yeah.
If you genuinely care about others, you will see a dramatic shift in things that other people do for you. There's nobody that, I mean, I don't know, not nobody, but there's a lot of people in this country that want to support veterans that are trying to find their way. And you'd be surprised at who would take your phone call to help you, but you've got to do the work too. One of the things that I always see, you can see with an interviewee or a student is they ask a real basic question, and it's like, what was being in the special forces like? I'm like, well, that's kind of a generic question. You just wasted I'm going to give you the answer, but it's kind of a waste of time. You could have thought maybe a little bit more pinpointed question. Like when I jump into business development, what are the two biggest challenges I'm going to face coming from an outsider with no industry knowledge? That's a different question than what's oil and gas like? Tell me about this.
Mm-hmm.
So do your homework, be relentless. When I thought I was interested in a career field for a while, I looked at consulting and, I was reading every damn book I could get my hands on to educate myself before I would meet somebody. And if I knew I was meeting someone that was high level or strategic or that their time was limited, I met them after I met all the other people that I could afford to learn from. So at every conversation, you should be learning. And, there's 5 things I used to tell a lot of people when they would network. Number one, you got to be interested and interesting. Number two, you got to get from professional to personal fast as possible. People will walk down the hall a lot farther and more routine for you if they have a personal relationship for you. Someone says, Scott, if you call me and say, hey, I've got this guy, Jeff, he'd really love to be in Houston. He heard the podcast. He's really excited about being there. I'm going to make sure I spend the time, write a more eloquent forward letter, reach out to some of the contacts. If someone just sends me an email and says, Dave, Jeff wants into oil and gas, I may not have time that week, or I may not make time. Well, people, the personal feeling is there's a lot of leverage in that. There's a lot of emotion in that. And that's what drives people to do things extra and go the extra mile. The next thing I'd say is the third thing is you got to get a second meeting. Without a second meeting, there's no relationship, continuous relationship. So if you meet somebody for coffee and you go through, all these great things, they have all this stuff, but you forget to have another meeting or another date to get together, it's a little awkward, or you may have to go start from scratch and be like, oh, would you be willing to do coffee again? When you kind of should have set that up before. So be interested and interesting, get from professional to personal as fast as possible, get a second meeting whenever you can. If someone's willing to meet with you once, they'll meet with you twice. It's just got to be convenient. Now, if someone reschedules once or twice, you only have about 2 times the change. The minute it goes to 3, people start blowing you off and you become a less of a priority and they become a less of a priority for you. Number 4, I'd say is get them to champion you to their network. So if you come to me, if Scott comes to me and says, Dave, who do you think would be great for Jeff to talk to? Then I go back and I say, these 3 guys that I know, or this lady that I know can really help shape that. Then that's a great step, because now you gave Jeff this 4 angles of people to meet to. So not only will he get to meet me when he comes to town, he's got 4 other people. So that's a really important factor. And then 5, take every single detail down, write every note you can think of. What kind of shirt I wore, what kind of hat I'm wearing, what kind of glasses, everything matters. Because what will happen is if you're networking the right way, you're not going to remember a lot of these conversations because they're going to get muddied. And you need to be able to look back at your notes and be like, man, last time I met with Scott, we talked about this, this, and this. He's got his daughter, he's got his son, he's looking at this. Let's get personal. Let's talk about, I'm going to tell him about my 5-year-old son, Hudson, and my daughter, Hannah. That's a game changer. There was a scenario where I met this lady, and I was doing all those things kind of subconsciously. I met this lady that was a very high-powered oil and gas executive early on. And I met her, and we met for an hour, and she was great. And I remember writing everything down the notes like I just prescribed. And then I wrote, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. She's pretty conventional. You needed to be a geoscientist and a petroleum engineer to be successful in oil and gas. And I had a business undergrad and a law degree, but nothing that would jump me into oil and gas right away. Well, I still wrote down everything, wrote a nice follow-up, hand wrote all my follow-ups on the cards. And then she writes me back 6 weeks later and says, Dave, I just thought about you when I was on vacation in North Carolina. And I ran into a buddy of mine that's looking for this kind of person for this job. I think you'd be great for it. Let me introduce you. Do you mind? Now, how shocked am I? I only met with her for an hour 6 weeks prior, and she remembered me on vacation when she ran into someone. So she would be what I would call kind of a strategic witness. So she's witnessing on my behalf. So I go back and I look at my notes on what I wrote, what she said. She was building Allison Breckenridge. She was a big skier. She went to Michigan, all these things. And I said, hey, thank you so much for the note. Love hearing from you. I hope your home building site is going well in wherever, Colorado. I can't wait to take my wife and kids up there. They love mountains. I made it all personal in the beginning. And I tied in a lot of the things that she said. And her response was, David, thank you for listening to me 6 weeks ago. It's really rare that someone actually cares about someone else's conversation. And then, you're in a great place for that person to be a help, a guide for you. And she was an exceptional leader. And so, I say all that to say, if I went to write that note 6 weeks later, I don't remember either. So it's a good thing I took notes that day, and it really paid off in the end. So that's definitely a practice that I'd recommend to everyone.
Yeah, that is phenomenal advice. Being able to form those personal relationships with people. You're absolutely right. When you have that personal connection to somebody, they're much more inclined to want to go out of their way to help you. And it's not just a selfish thing either. Like you're trying to use this network. It's definitely a way to grow together and help
Right.
each other out. And if you have that personal connection with somebody, if we had a personal connection together, I'm going to be thinking about you just as much as you're thinking about me, and then we help each other out that way. And I think that's how the whole network grows, when you do that type of thing, where you're just out there trying to help each other out.
Right.
So
Well, that's how we met. That's how you and I met, through Mike, right? So
right.
Mike was my first team leader in the SF, and if he says, "Hey, you need to meet somebody," I'm going to meet him. Period. So
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And so, working that personal network and getting those personal connections together with people is just I think a smart way to go. And so I think, especially in the military, the veteran community, a lot of times people will kind of like isolate away from each other and not really be too outgoing and getting out there in front of a whole bunch of people. But definitely get out and network with people. It's going to pay off in the long run. It may not pay off, tomorrow. You meet
right.
someone today, and then tomorrow you all of a sudden are having this great opportunity land at your feet. But you know down the line, that network will help. And I mean, it's helped me tremendously in my business and in my personal life. Just having those connections. You may not think, like, is it worth going to this networking event or a conference in your industry or whatever. You may not think it's even worth it, but 5-6 years later down the line, you may tap back into some of those connections that you made at some of these events. So it's definitely worth it, and expand your network and reach out and meet people. It's definitely good advice.
Yeah, and for me now, the I don't necessarily need a network to get a job, but I love the network that I have, because now I've kind of transitioned for them. A lot of them have grown in their companies, and now if I bring awareness to a charity or something, I get a lot of support from those people, and it's powerful, right? So I
Yeah.
do a lot of work supporting the Green Beret Foundation and some other charities that around veteran causes, and now I leverage that network to tap into, hey, there's a golf tournament coming up. I'd love to get your company to sponsor, and then all of a sudden it changes the dynamic for that. So it's a powerful thing. I'd say the number one characteristic as an individual going in, though, is going into it with a genuine desire to help others. And by that, it'll help you. There's a thing called give to get kind of thing. Be
Yep.
grateful for your opportunities to help others. Be grateful that you can walk into that meeting when someone else may come in a wheelchair.
Yep.
The other thing about those networks is that there's just a lot of, there's a lot of great things, whether it's startup incubators or ideas that you have. It's a great community to come through. I went to Rice Business School, and there's a thing called Veterans and Business Association, and they do like a Shark Tank thing, right? So now you've got high level vets doing high level entrepreneur ideas, and they've got a big city incubator around them. And it's exciting, so it can be everything from let's just have a happy hour to let's have a community, let's have a golf fundraiser, and then let's have some real professional opportunities raising money to drive business. I mean, there's a lot of growth there. I mean, there's some pretty neat veteran businesses like Black Rifle Coffee is exceptional. Grunt Style came out. That guy was a drill sergeant. Didn't have a crazy career, was just a hungry, driven guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of great things that are out there now. And I always, I kind of joke around like the patriotism thing's kind of for some reason it's in debate at the country right now, which I can't believe and understand. But at the same time, it's really important for those communities to come together and support each other's brands that come out. I love buying veteran stuff. Like if you're a veteran company and you're trying to get your word out there, or trying to build something, there's some really neat veterans out there doing some neat stuff. Regimental Barrel Works is a friend of mine that does some really cool stuff. with wood and making all these ornate plaques like you got behind yourself a little bit. But I don't know. I mean, if not us, who? If not now, when? Right. So it's the question.
Exactly, and I think that's how the military community is, and we're out there to support one another, and I think that's a good place to end it. So with that, David, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, hearing about your experiences and your stories and your career path. People in the Houston area, are you guys, that networking group, is that still
Yep.
still meeting? Yeah. Okay.
So
where can people go to find out more about that and actually everything else you're doing?
Yeah, if you look on LinkedIn, there's a group called Houston Veterans in Business. You can put my email out. I think you've got it, but you can email me and I'll get you on the list for the weekly update. Basically, there's a happy hour still every Wednesday. And then if you need anything from me, just find me by email or look for my phone as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll have links to all of the stuff that we talked about in the episode today in the show notes. So anyone who's interested, if you're in the Houston area, you want to get involved, definitely check that out. I'll have the link to the Houston Veterans in Business group in the show notes. And again, thank you for joining me. And I really appreciate the information that you're able to share with us today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, and look forward to talking to others.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Drive On Podcast.